A very warm welcome to our guest speakers and to our guests in the audience. I'm Carol Edmondson from KaushalyaUK, which is a not-for-profit community organisation. I have been volunteering with Kaushalya as an event host and sourcer of speakers for the last 3 years now, and I love every moment of it. The CEO and founder of KaushalyaUK is Ritu Sharma, who is here with us. She is a woman empowerment ambassador. She is an author, best-selling author, and she is also an entrepreneur and has a production company, and also an actor. What else about this amazing lady? She has a heart for people and those, especially women, who have been disadvantaged. So for those joining for the first time, KaushalyaUK is a registered not-for-profit community organisation working tirelessly to empower and uplift women, but also inviting men to contribute, hence our Men Are From Mars event now. The main aim of the organisation is to empower, connect communities, raise awareness of issues that affect women. Distinct objectives of KaushalyaUK is not just to support those who are in dire need, but also to support women who are on a journey to create a life of fulfillment through their personal, professional, and financial growth. Projects include education, personal and professional growth, health and well-being, financial education and entrepreneurship, as well as workshops. So if any of our speakers would like to be considered for a 45-minute to an hour workshop, we have a volunteer who coordinates those as well by the name of Zina Kula. Let me know and I will connect you. And many social events, as I mentioned. Also 2 local face-to-face events on the 1st and 3rd Monday of each month. As well as the Men Are From Mars event, we also have an all-female women empowerment event with 4 female speakers, and that takes place on the 3rd Thursday of every month. Each event hosts different speakers. So just before we start, I'd like to ask everyone to please mute their mics if they're not already muted. And there will be an opportunity to ask questions of the speakers when all 4 speakers have spoken. I will then open up the floor for Q&A. I will also do my best to monitor the chat, so please feel free to type in anything if you don't want to ask your question out loud. So it gives me great pleasure kicking us off for the evening to introduce you to our first speaker, joining us from Reunion Island, which I believe is near Madagascar. And right now it's nearly 10:10 p.m. for Heather. So Heather Markle. Heather has spent over 25 years stuck behind a desk in her corporate career. In 2017, she made a bold decision to quit her job and take a 6-month career break to travel the world. Instead, she found a new way of life. Since that time, Heather has been to 35 countries on 6 continents, including being marooned in New Zealand for 2 years during the pandemic. 6 years later, she still has no permanent address. Today, Heather is a New York Times featured full-time travel and business coach who works with professionals who want to start or sustain extended travel or work remotely while traveling. She is a best-selling author and a TEDx speaker focused on the opportunities of full-time travel. She teaches her clients the mindset, money, and mastery they need in order to achieve their lifestyle. Her mission is to help frustrated professionals seeking freedom and flexibility to ditch their desk and discover their destiny through full-time travel. Well, I am certainly looking forward to hearing more, Heather. I yield the floor to you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And yes, I am in Reunion Island, which I actually had hoped it was going to be country 36, but it is actually an overseas department of France. And yes, it is right near Madagascar and also Mauritius, if you know either of those. I am a professional world traveler, and what I do is I immerse myself in different cultures. So what that means is I live in different countries for anywhere from a few weeks to a few months. The requirements are different, and I get to see how people live, and maybe even dare to get bored in a different country. And different than vacation travel, where I would have been racing around to see all the different tourist sites in like a few days or a week, and then race to the next place on my next vacation. So my love of cultural immersion actually started, and this is where I have some pictures. So let me see if I can bring this up. When I lived with a host family, when I was a teenager, in Louviers, France. This is the church that's right down the road from my French host family's house. They live on a farm, and so I fell in love with cows to speak French fluently when I lived with them. And I fell in love here with cows as well as the language. And if you watch any of my YouTube videos or read my blog, you'll see there's a lot of cows there. And after this experience, which really helped create who I am today, I became obsessed with languages, because the experience of being able to communicate with people in a language that wasn't mine and learn how much deeper I could connect with them in their language was just so profound to me that I wanted to learn as many languages as I could. So in college, I studied a bunch more, and by the time I graduated, I spoke 6 languages. So at the start of my professional career, I was really happy because I was working for a French company and then a British company. I was traveling to Europe. I was using my language skills. I was having a great time until, through mergers and acquisitions, I ended up working for AT&T, and my international career came to a very abrupt end. So I was really, really unhappy because, all of the skill set and the passion that I had was just of no use to this new company. And I had no idea where to go. So while I was there, I, in 2008, got certified as a professional coach, and I began my entrepreneurial career on top of my full-time working career. And so I noticed, though, that the more I was in this job and the further I was getting away from the cultural immersion I loved, I had this profound sense that there just had to be more to life than this feeling I had that I was rotting at my desk, waiting for this magic retirement day when I was supposed to finally be able to have fun and enjoy myself. And the more I worked, the less this whole equation made sense. And also my career really came to a standstill. I thought I was ambitious. I wanted to be promoted. And I just got into this cycle where I just kept making kind of flat moves, and they really didn't impact my salary. And I looked for other jobs, and I just couldn't find anything else that lit me up. And my coaching business, business coaching at the time, I started to out-earn my corporate job salary with my coaching. So I thought, well, maybe I should quit my job to go and run my business full time. Except that to get to that point with my business, I was working all the time. And so naturally, I just completely burnt out. So I end up, at this point in my life, feeling like I don't know what I'm doing with myself, that I'm wasting my life waiting for retirement. And I ended up, it was very hard to quit because obviously there's a lot of really good reasons not to quit. How am I supposed to make money? What about health benefits? And I spent 10 years starting in January saying, this is the year I'm going to quit. And then I get to December of that same year and I wouldn't have quit. And I kept, having these logical conversations with myself and feeling more and more upset until I reached January of 2017. And I finally was depressed. And that's when I started having this pain in my chest. And I knew from a prior experience where I had been in the wrong relationship, and I had spent years ping-ponging with the emotions between my head and my heart and not acting on them. That ping pong of emotions became 2 herniated discs in my neck, which was the most excruciating pain I had ever felt in my life. So when I felt this pain in my chest, I immediately was like, I am not turning this pain into some horrible physical ailment. I'm out. That's what made me commit to quit. And that January of 2017, when I said, I'm quitting this year, it was completely different because it wasn't just words. It was a feeling. It was a complete commitment. And so that year I decided I needed to test my resolve. Because if I'm really going to quit and make this huge change in my life, I need to see, like, am I really up to this? And so I determined that I would find throughout the year opportunities to test my resolve. So the first one came when I went to Iceland. So I went to Iceland in February of 2017, and I saw the Northern Lights for the very first time. And they just blew me away. It felt like, if you've never seen them, the first time I saw them, I felt like I had met God. I don't know how else to say. It was just like, it was this very spiritual experience. And I stayed in Iceland for a week. And when it came time to leave, I did not want to go home. Now, this is not new, because pretty much every vacation I ever took in my life, I did not want to go home. But I tried, actually. There was a huge snowstorm that dumped like 25 inches of snow in Reykjavik. So I was like, great, they're going to cancel the flight. But of course, nothing cancels flights in Iceland. So I went home. And when I got there, I thought, I am in the wrong place in the wrong time. And I looked up the forecast for the Northern Lights for the next night. And I was like, it was such a good forecast that I knew I would be eternally disappointed if I didn't return. So for the first time in my life, this was like test number 1. I booked a flight back to Iceland 8 hours after I had landed in New York City. And I went back the next day, had called my boss, like, I was supposed to come in today, won't be in for a couple more days. And I went back to Iceland, saw the Northern Lights a second time, and this time they danced. So it felt very much like I was rewarded for this huge risk that I took. So opportunity number 2 to test my resolve came also from Iceland, where while I was there the first week, I had met this Spanish guy, and we stayed up all night talking, and we exchanged numbers, and we stayed in touch for 6 months. We had video chats like every day, and we finally started talking about, oh, you should come to New York. Oh, you should come to Spain. And I was like, okay, I'll come to Spain. So I thought, test number 2, fly off to Spain for the weekend and go and hang out with this guy that you hardly know, that you spend a few hours with in person and have been interacting with on video. So I flew off to Spain, and needless to say, the relationship did not work out, but I had tested my resolve and won, right? And that, I was unscathed from the experience, and I had done it. So that prepared me for test number 3, which was the hardest one, which was informing my mother that I was going to quit my job and travel. And it went really well, because I got her drunk, and she took the information really, really well. And then the next day, of course, she sobered up. And for about the next month, she then gave me, I think, roughly like a reason every day. It was a different reason every day why I shouldn't quit my job. And the more of these reasons I got from her, the more I suddenly realized, oh my gosh, all of these reasons that I've been holding myself back from traveling full time and quitting my job aren't my fears, and they aren't my anxieties. It was like a complete wow. And so in the end, my mom actually made me realize I am completely ready to do this. So when I told my boss that I was quitting, it was the most anticlimactic moment of my life. It was absolutely crazy. So I originally went out, I planned to quit my job, as you said at the beginning, travel for 6 months, and then get back to it and go back to real life. So I went to Costa Rica, and I remember when I landed, like, my heart, it was weird. I heard my heart speak to me and thank me for, having the trust to go do this. And so I get to Costa Rica, and when I took the taxi from the airport to my hotel, we passed this sign that said zip lining. And I had never heard of ziplining. So I asked the driver, like, what is that? And when he explained to me, it was essentially like you hang from a string thousands of feet above, like above the ground, like slide down the string. It just sounded really dumb. And I thought, well, I would never, ever do that. And about a week later, I had met this lovely Canadian couple. And sure enough, we decided to go ziplining. So it was one of the most terrifying experiences of my life, and also became one of the most exhilarating. I don't think I'll ever do it again, but it definitely pushed me outside my comfort zone, which when you travel full time, you will be pushed out of your comfort zone a lot. And I think in life, of course, the places that we expand the most are those places where we expand that comfort zone. So I did that. And then 2 weeks into my trip, I do believe that when we follow our heart and try something new, we're also tested, right? The universe is going to test, like, how much do we really want this? Are we really cut out for this? And this happened to me 2 weeks in. So I'm in Costa Rica at a place called Corcovado National Park, which is, for all intents and purposes, the middle of nowhere. You have to take a boat to get there. And I'm living in a tent on the beach, and it sounds really awesome, but there were cockroaches in the tent. And I told them, if you don't bother me, I won't bother you. But so the Wi-Fi was terrible. The manager was worse. And I spent like 3 or 4 hours trying to figure out, I wanted to meet that Canadian couple that I had met in a different part of Costa Rica. So I'm like, I couldn't figure out how to meet them. And it seemed like it was either a dangerous or an expensive ride to get them. And I realized, if I can't figure out how to meet 2 new friends in the same country that I'm in, I'm obviously not cut out for full-time travel. And I had a whole pity party and a whole meltdown. And I decided I would give up, just pack my bags, go back to New York, and ask for my job back. And while I'm party, this voice appears in my head, because as a full-time traveler, epiphanies happen a lot. And this voice said, Heather, instead of focusing on where you can't get, why don't you figure out where you can go? It's like, well, that's really wise. So I took that advice, and that's how I found this amazing small town in Costa Rica that I probably would never have found otherwise. Had a whole spiritual experience, and it changed the game and immersed me in full-time travel. And I just knew that I was going to keep doing it. And the thing about what I'm doing now, it's interesting because I spent, almost 26 years working in corporate. And the first 6 months that I traveled full time, I felt more accomplished than in my entire career, because who cares that I helped a customer save $5,000? I ziplined. I completely challenged my comfort zone. I did things like by myself, navigate foreign countries, figure out how bus systems work, change cultures. There's so many different things that I've done in this travel experience that make me feel that make me know what I'm made of and make me know how resourceful I am. I think that what I learned through this experience is I think we really fall into this unfortunate belief system in our life that we're supposed to earn lots and lots of money so that we can go and buy some nice large space to live in. And then we can go buy lots and lots of stuff to put in that space. And while we're at it, we also like to be able to create lots and lots of responsibilities so that we can then prove that we're honoring our commitments, even though we often don't really like what we're committing to. There's just certainly the trap that I fell into. And it's really, as a traveler who's now stepped out of that lifestyle, to be able to look in and realize wow, I have so much power to choose what I want in my life. And I didn't realize that. I don't know about you, if you guys have ever had that experience where if you're working full time in corporate and you just kind of go along with what people are telling you to do, and you're kind of head down and you don't really notice what's going around you. And it feels like you have to live this life. And then to pull out of that and realize, oh, but I chose that. I didn't realize that. I actually chose to go with that, way of being and that way of working. And now I and choose that again if I want, but now I'll know it's powerfully my choice. And if I don't like this choice, I can change that choice, which I think is a really powerful thing to know for anyone in life. And the other thing I saw was that, that inspired me to quit is that before I quit, I saw one colleague who was really, really hardworking, great person. He passed away before he even retired. And then another colleague of mine who was one of the most well-liked and well-respected gentlemen on my team, he retired. And a month later, he passed away. And it made me realize that, the future is not a guarantee. And I think that we just spend too much time preparing for that future that isn't guaranteed. And it takes us away from living in the present moment. And worse yet, I think we learned that that if we try to live in the present moment, we might be robbing our future. And I think those are unfortunate things to carry. And that because that feeling, if you've never had it, of living in the present moment, where your thoughts and your emotions and your actions and your vision, everything is focused on the exact same moment. It's the most powerful experience I've ever had in my life. And I think that one of the other things that also inspired me to quit is that I had this awful nightmare of being 90 years old and sitting in my rocking chair and thinking, like, looking back at my life and wondering, like, what if I had had the courage to quit my job and travel? What would my life have been like? And so what's great is that now I know that no matter what happens, I don't have to worry about wondering what if. I know I have like 85,000 photos on my phone that are that remind me of all of the amazing places I've been and the amazing things that I've done. And I think all the time about the fact that if I had not quit my job and started traveling in 2018, I probably would have been stuck in my apartment in New York City for 2 years during the pandemic. And instead, I got stuck in New Zealand on 5 acres of nature for 2 years where we had no COVID. So, I mean, I've been really, really lucky to follow my heart when I did and to have the experiences that I have. And I've been to 35 countries so far. Reunion would have been 36, except that it's not a country. And so, oh well. And people often ask me what my favorite country is. And that's a hard one to answer. I've been to some amazing places, as you can see. Siem Reap in Cambodia, hiked Perito Moreno Glacier in Argentina, went to Namibia, Easter Island. These are just a few of the great places that I have been. Machu Picchu. People ask me too, is traveling full-time as a solo traveler, is it lonely? And I would say, sometimes it is, because but the times that I'm most lonely are when I'm surrounded by couples. And other than that, if I don't want to be alone, I just go outside and talk to people. And the other thing that people ask me a lot is it safe? Do I feel safe traveling alone as a female solo traveler? And I do think that women have a different set of concerns than men do living. But I know that I always, I'm very aware of where I am and what the rules are. And I add to that awareness by asking locals, like, where should I not go? What time should I be back at night? And I abide by those rules, just a few of those things. And another question that I'm asked a lot is, how on earth do you afford full-time travel? Because I think if this is what kept me, this is the big thing that kept me from traveling and doing this lifestyle sooner, because I thought, when you work in a job or corporate and you look into this lifestyle, it looks like we're on vacation. And when you're on vacation, you're escaping from what you aren't happy with, and you want to pamper yourself and make yourself feel good. So you go somewhere really cool, you stay in an expensive resort, you book a massage, you have nice meals, you go on tours, and you can probably blow about $4,000 or $5,000 in a week. Now, if you take that and you multiply that times 4 for a month, well, you're through like 20 grand in a month. And obviously, who could afford that unless you're uber wealthy? So I will tell you that full-time travel is nothing like vacation travel. When I got New Zealand, it was really funny because I started like living in one place again and buying bottles of olive oil and shampoo. And I'm like, oh gosh, like I never buy this stuff when I'm traveling. And so you have a very different set of expenses when you're traveling full time versus when you are working full time and trying to afford a fixed life in one place. And it's actually crazy less expensive to travel full time than it is to live a fixed life in one place. And part of the way that you afford it is by mitigating and offsetting a lot of the different costs that you have. There's a lot of different strategies with that, which is what I help people with figuring out who want to transition to this lifestyle. And I think I would like to leave you with a few thoughts. I believe it's important to follow your heart, even when your head gets in the way. And if you are ever in physical pain in your life, I would urge you to just take a look at whether you are living that you want or whether you are living a life that someone else wants for you. And if your heart wants you to do something that you think seems kind of crazy, because that's usually what it wants, remember that if you take action on it, you might just be giving other people permission who want to do the same thing. And at the end of the day, maybe you're not as crazy as you thought. You might just be a trendsetter.
Awesome. Excellent. Thank you, Heather.
Thank you.
You answered one of my questions I would have asked you. We'll get to that later about, do you find it lonely? But thank you so much for sharing your life with us.
My pleasure.
Very exciting, but very scary. So thank you, Heather. And now, are you going to be able to stay till the end, Heather?
Yes, I'm going to do my best to stay awake, yes.
As it is, for those who've just joined us, it is 10:30, just gone, 10:30 p.m. in Reunion Island near Madagascar. Yeah. Thank you. So it gives me great pleasure again to introduce you to our next guest speaker, who is Brian Berry. Brian Berry, Harvesting Chaos, LLC leadership consultant and speaker. Brian has spent 30 years in the investment advisory industry as either a sole owner or partner. During that time, he helped his clients build and maintain wealth by helping them learn how to harvest during both good times and bad. Late in his career, he wondered if he was facing a crisis of passion for what he had done for his entire career, and then dealt with the most chaotic moment of his life as he faced a life-threatening illness. He transformed his experiences into leadership guidance and consultation, both in the for-profit and non-profit worlds. After facing and surviving a second life-threatening medical crisis, he also began helping people find and pursue their passions by increasing their self-awareness and seek peace in their lives. Brian will share a unique view that he calls harvesting chaos to pursue passion. Yo, Brian, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Carol. And it's been a while since we had a chance to talk, so I'm happy to see you again as well. So, folks, I want to start off by just asking you a quick question to think about something. What comes to mind when you hear the term T-minus 60? Just think about that for a second. It could be the countdown to a space shuttle launch, or I don't think we have the space shuttles anymore, so maybe SpaceX or something like that, or perhaps it's a countdown to an upcoming wedding, or maybe a new house purchase, or maybe in Heather's case, maybe it's the countdown to the next vacation, which for my wife and I, it actually is. We have on a whiteboard in our kitchen right now, T-minus, I forget how many days it is until our next trip to one of our favorite places in the world, where Heather, for the first time, we are going to try ziplining. So I wrote that down and you said it. I was like, yes, this is our connection here. So, but typically when you hear of a countdown like that, a T-minus 60, almost always there's some positive thought that comes to mind. It usually means there's something to look forward to, or some big occasion coming up, something that you're just excited to go experience. But what if it's not? I want to give you guys a little bit of background. I haven't introduced myself yet. My name is Brian Barry. Carol, thank you for saying that. I grew up in a small town at the foothills of the Blue Ridge Mountains in Virginia. To give you guys who aren't familiar with that some idea of where it is, if you know where Washington, D.C. is, we're about 90 miles south to slightly west of that, literally right at the foothills of that first line of mountains on the easternmost side of the United States. Not a lot going on there. It's pretty quiet. So there's not a lot of chaotic moments that take place there. And typically, growing up in a very normal life, if there were chaotic moments, then they were usually self-induced or self-created. And by that, I mean, growing up in a small town where there's not a lot to do, if you have a couple of guys and you get around, you can figure out a way to find some things to get into. Oftentimes, though, the coolest part about it was they created some great stories that you got to share later on. But for the most part, life was pretty simple. There wasn't a lot of chaos involved. I wasn't a troubled kid. I didn't get into a whole lot of trouble, or at least I didn't get caught for getting into a lot of trouble. Thinking back, I think the most chaotic times that I got into, and I should have known then that they were a precursor for things to come. One of the greatest stories I've ever been able to tell, I mean, cool stories. I actually got indirectly struck by lightning at one point. When I was in high school, I was in our kitchen in our house, and I had my hands on our old metal sink in the kitchen. Lightning struck a tree right out in front of that window. And the energy traveled through a root that had wrapped around one of the metal poles under the ground, right up through the plumbing in the house, and hit me in my hands. So I got to play for the next 2 or 3 seconds, maybe not quite that long, but it lifted me off the ground and threw me backwards over a table in our house into a hallway. The cool story that I got to tell at football practice that afternoon was that I got to be the upside down, backwards flying Superman. And that's how that story went. Later on at football practice that day, another storm came up, started to thunder, started to lightning. And oddly enough, no one wanted to stand around me. So I thought it doesn't strike the same place twice, but I was in a different place. So they thought it might strike the same person twice. So some of those things are good stories. One other story that I had that gets shared a lot is I once, doing something simple for my father's business, changing a truck tire, had a handle on a maul split in my hand. And it shot, for those who can see, it shot a splinter almost 5 inches long into that part of my hand. It stopped at that part of my finger. So walking into the doctor's office, I walked in like that because I couldn't bend my finger, which was pretty odd. Interestingly enough, they kind of made fun at me for being upset about a splinter being in my hand until they pulled it out and saw the size of it. So you can imagine I still have that splinter somewhere, but the stories that I told when I showed that splinter, sometimes that splinter was 18 or 19 inches long when I told the story. So anyhow, but one of the greatest things about that is we were at peace. We were happy. And most of the world at that time, from the news that you could follow, was also relatively happy. We knew some things were going on around the world. We were young. Vietnam was a thing and ending, and there were some other things going on. But it wasn't like today, or at least it didn't seem like things are today. And I wonder sometimes, do we recognize the lack of peace in the world because we see it 24/7 more often? Or is there really just more bad things happening, which from my own standpoint, I think there's a crisis of peace in the world, because I don't think people are creating the problems on their own. I think there are a lot of people out there that just want to create problems, and they want other people to not be happy. And that's, without getting too deep about it, it's a sad thing, and it's really something that started to be recognized. I'm going to share something with you guys here. Gallup, which is a research poll or research company, has actually done a couple of. Let's see here. Hold on. Where did it go? I'm going to try to share something with you all. And of course, now this one I can't find what I'm trying to share. There it is, right there. All right. Pardon that. A little slip up. They actually did a poll on global sadness. Back at the end of 2021 or the beginning of 2022, I can't remember exactly when it was, probably the end of 2021, they literally asked folks one question. And that was, yesterday, was your day filled mostly with sadness? More than a quarter of the people who answered that question said, yes, yesterday for me was mostly sad. The other stat that you can't see is there was another 15% that said, I experienced sadness yesterday. Further discussions took that into, they weren't experiencing any peace in their life. A lot of them couldn't identify where the lack of peace was. They just knew a couple of things. Number one, they weren't happy. They didn't have peace in their life, but they couldn't identify it. Today, when I work with leaders, before we do anything else about how their business is being run or whether or not they're a good accountant or anything else, we deal with two things. And Carol mentioned the two of them. We build a baseline of self-awareness and inner peace because we want to address those two. I'm certified by an organization called Giant Worldwide. Giant Worldwide is just a global leadership development company. There are several, but Giant is the one that I'm certified with. One of the founders created an index just called the Peace Index. And it really helps us drill down into 5 areas of a person's life: their purpose, their place, their provision, their personal health, and their people. And we just look at one of those because if we're dealing with a leader who's constantly in crisis mode or isn't thinking clearly or can't figure out situations, then there's something going on inside that we need to address. So we want to become self-aware of what that is and then figure out a way to generate peace in that area. It's a very simple tool. If anyone wants the link to it to play around with, I'm happy to share it. But we just look at each one of these categories, say people, for example. Now, again, going back to Heather changes the people in her life often, probably. So just because of the travel. But it's basically just the people in your life. Are you happy with them? Are they helpful? Are the friendships good? Are the folks that you work with? All of that. And we just ask folks to score themselves from 0 to 100 on this. Sum up those scores, divide by 5 to have a general peace index. Typically, if someone's at 80 or above, things are going pretty well. If in any of the categories, though, we're at 65-ish to below, then we need to do some work there. We need to drill in and find out what's going on. And when we go into that and we find an area, and maybe it's their place, maybe they just don't like where they live, or they're doing a comparison thing and they notice what everyone else has in their house, but they don't have it, and they just don't feel great about it. Well, one of the things we want to do is, let's say we identify that, we want to use another simple discussion tool. We want to use this item called a hope meter. If we're going to change that for you, or we're going to try to help you with that, how hopeful are you that we can actually do that? Are you 50% hopeful? Maybe there's a chance it can get better. Are you 90% hopeful? We can definitely do it. They just need some help getting to that point. Or are they more hopeless? Are they only 10%? This is so bad for me. I have 0 peace and there's no chance it's going to get better. That's a whole nother story that we have to address for folks, right? So when we work through that, though, we have some other things that we do with folks. If we can develop hope, then we can work on increasing peace. Then we can get them back to being 100% healthy to go do what they do, to be productive, to be multiplicative in their business or in their home. And it could be anything. So with that background, I want to fast forward a little bit. I want to fast forward to about 5 years ago. So I'm fast forwarding, but to a point in the past. In 2018, after about 25 years of being in the investment advisory business, and in that business, I either owned my own business or was a partner in businesses. If you're not sure what an investment advisor is, think stockbroker, financial planner, a little different than those two, but along the same lines. But our goal was to make sure we were helping people correctly take care of their money. So whatever they wanted to do in life or whatever they were doing currently, we could help them generate the funds to do that or manage the funds to do that. When we did that with them, we always created a document to guide us with, a playbook, if you will. We called it an investment policy statement. In that investment policy statement were all the guidelines that we knew, everything that we knew about the client, the amount of funds they had to invest, what their goals and objectives were, what their tolerance for risk in the market was. For example, if they saw the market fell 2% in the day, were they going to lose sleep that night? All of those things went into that plan so we could come up with the right allocation to manage their money. In addition to that, we laid out a series of what ifs. How would we react to certain things that might happen in the market? Things that we could predict would happen. We can predict a recession. We can predict bad earnings. We can predict interest rates moving up or down, things that are going to impact investments. And we would lay out a series of steps. This is how we're going to address those. And we would go over those with the clients a lot so that when they happened, there wouldn't be a panic. The clients wouldn't suddenly lose focus of what was going on. They would know they could come back to that document or pick up the phone, and we were going to go over that document with them. And it helped us a number of times. And during the time that I was in the market, in 25 years in the market, you will see everything. You will see recessions. You'll probably see some type of a depression. You'll see other things that are one-offs that happen. In 1997, there was a Russian currency crisis that panicked everyone, and interest rates immediately got dropped all over the world. And we got calls about that. And we were like, we have a plan for that. Here's what we're going to do. And it worked great. Sometimes you can have this great playbook and something will happen that's not in your plan. And you have to know how am I going to react when that happens? In September of 2001, something happened, right? It happened and it wasn't in our playbook. We didn't have anything in our investment policy statement that said, hey, when a couple of planes get driven into a couple of tall buildings and thousands of people die and the market gets shut down for a week, we didn't have that in our playbook anywhere. And a lot of people panicked. So when we got calls, what we had to do was go back to where some firm footing was. Heather, if you're climbing a mountain and you start to slide a little bit, one of the first things you look for is a firm foothold, right? Or a handhold or something to steady and get back to where you feel safe. And that's what we would always do. When 2001, there was nothing in the playbook for that. So you don't know how things are going to react. And the way we calmed people down was going back to what we did know, which was tomorrow, people are going to wake up and they're going to turn their lights on. And a lot of people are going to go to their kitchen and get their food and cook a meal. And a lot of people are going to get in their car and drive to work. And a lot of people are going to pay bills. And so all of those things are going to happen. So there were areas we knew that we could still put folks' money into. By sticking to that, the fourth quarter of 2001 for a lot of people was great. For the ones who panicked and did the wrong thing, which, by the way, when you panic and start making decisions based on panic, we all know typically we make the wrong decisions in that moment. We're simply not getting enough oxygen to our brains to think clearly. So coming along, that was what always guided us. And up till 2018, for me, it was one of the things that did provide passion, creating these plans, which we went through with folks. The folks were successful. We got to see them live and do great things. And by the time we got to 2018, especially into the summer of 2018, for my wife and I, my wife is on the call, by the way. So anything I say, you guys are witnesses. If it's so, but she's a strong advocate. So she's an important part of everything about this. Our own peace index was really high in the summer of 2018. Our oldest son had graduated from college a year earlier, was well into his career. Our younger son had just finished his second year of college, was doing great. A few years before that, we had built an addition onto our house and moved my mother-in-law into it to take care of her, and she was doing great. Everyone in the extended family was doing well. Late in the spring, twice we traveled to the Dominican Republic, which is one of our favorite places to go to. Carol, I'm assuming you've probably been there with all the places you've been, but we love going there. And we went there late spring and turned around a month later, went back. Actually made an investment down there so we could go more often. Later in the summer, we took my mother-in-law out to California for a family reunion. And as we were getting back in the middle of August, we reflected on where all of our peace index scores were. Our place was great. We loved our house. We had a great backyard, a great patio, great back porch. Our provision was awesome. We had all the money we needed. We were doing great. Our purpose, we both had really strong purposes at that point for family. My purposes started to wane a little bit for what I did for a living, but I didn't really know what to make of it. I didn't know what was causing it. All the other areas were great. Our people were great. Our personal health was good, especially my wife's. But in the middle of August, we get back from California, and I just start to feel a little gnawing in my abdomen. and deal with it for a couple of weeks because I thought maybe I had food poisoning. Maybe I pulled a muscle doing something. I'm a guy, so I just need to drink more antacid or take more Advil, and I'll get through this. About 3 weeks after this trip back from California, though, I realized that I've lost all my energy. I've gained about 30 pounds of fluid, and I look like the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, literally, that full of fluid. Finally, a week later, after my wife has been saying, you need to go to the doctor, you need to go to the doctor. I'm like, it'll pass, I'll get through it. About a week later, though, on a Saturday, I called my doctor and I said, hey, there's something wrong. I need you to help out with me. I need to be able to come see you. Went in bright and early Monday morning. He looked at me, had sort of a horrified look on his face, ran some tests, did a scan. When this one particular scan was over later on in the course of the day, I got a call from him right away coming out of the machine. And it said, his voice said, get to the ER. We didn't really know why. And so we said, can you tell us why? And he said, well, I'm not, this isn't my specialty. So I'll tell you, though, that I think you have some problems with your liver and your kidneys, perhaps your pancreas. So we had a very quiet 10-minute ride to the hospital from that point. We get to the hospital, we go through a series of tests, a lot more scans, and some procedures to go through as well. So pretty much everything you can have done to you over a period of 5 or 6 hours, I had done, including being questioned as if I were on trial. I will tell you that if you ever get diagnosed with a liver issue, there is one route that everybody goes down immediately as to why your liver is not functioning. And so you have to answer all those questions to prove that that's not the reason. And they treat you differently a little bit too. But by late that night, sitting in our room, one of the doctors finally came back in and we are questioning a lot of what's going on. Our heads are spinning. We're not talking a whole lot because we can't even think of the words to form sentences at that point. We get the diagnosis. The diagnosis is you have end-stage liver failure and you have stage 4/5 kidney failure, both kidneys. There's an issue with your pancreas, but we're not going to worry about that right now because we need to deal with the other things. At that point, our peace index went to 0. Our provision was still good, but it didn't matter at that point. Our place was awful because we weren't home. We were at the hospital. It wasn't our place. Our people score was very low because they weren't our people. They were doctors and nurses, and those were not our people. Our purpose, we didn't know what it was at that point. Obviously, personal health for me, was at a 0. The next question I asked was, what's the prognosis? Because I'm still processing everything. And I get the answer. And it's stunning. So to that point in our life, I pretty much tried to deal with everything that happened in life using humor to diffuse stressful situations or just high energy situations. I always thought if I can make somebody laugh, we can calm this down and figure things out. At 9:30 p.m. on September 17th, 2018, I heard you have 60 days. And I could find 0 humor anywhere. And I was looking for it. I was trying to find it. The doctor sort of inadvertently provided the humor on his way out the room that night. He turned around and looked at us and said, try to get some rest. And I chuckled because I don't think that's going to happen tonight with that news. Ann and I started to look in our playbook. We didn't have that anywhere in our playbook, right? We didn't have live life happily, be great, get hit with sudden news that you have 60 days to live. We're searching for answers. How do we deal with this? So we start finding that. We start reaching for that foothold, that solid rock. Where is it? For us at that moment, everything else got stripped, and what we had left was prayer. And so we started praying. We didn't really know what to pray for, but praying felt like what we were supposed to do. It was in that moment that I grabbed my journal and I scribbled something down. And when I looked down, it said T-60. T-60 became the new purpose. I had to make sure my wife was going to be okay. I had to make sure my kids were going to be okay. I had to make sure my family was going to be okay. I had to make sure my clients were going to be okay. I had to make sure my partner was going to be okay. For the remainder of that night, I wrote down about 30 days worth of things that I had to get done. Bullet point items, calls that I needed to make. Client things that I knew I needed to take care of, things at the house that I wanted done. At about 5 o'clock in the morning, finally thinking maybe I should go to sleep, it hit me. 60 days. 60 freaking days. That's 8 weeks. That's 2 months. Trying to just make sense of and quantify it, and I couldn't find it. But it hit me then that my purpose is wrong. I just wrote down the wrong purpose. My purpose is to live right now. I need to live so I can make these other things happen. So it changed the outlook on everything. I talked my way out of the hospital after 1 week. And when I say I talked my way out, I really mean that. My wife's probably shaking her head right now. It wasn't a good thing to do. I immediately came right back to the hospital, but over the next 2 weeks was in and out of the hospital. The purpose was fine. The purpose was live. The place still was low because place was at home. That's where I wanted to sleep, and I wasn't getting to do it very often. The people were fine. We were starting to make our people situation better. And by that, we had to make some choices. We had to make sure the doctors were correct. We had to make sure that all the specialists were correct. And in doing that, we made changes. We had a kidney doctor that wasn't a part of the team, at least not my team. And that was shown because he failed to communicate with us the way we needed to be communicated with at the time. So we fired him like 3 weeks into the process. I don't have a lot of time to pick another one, but we did, and it was the right thing. And occasionally we actually had nurses come in that and let me hesitate and say, we had some great nurses. Some of the finest people in the world that we have ever met were some of the nurses that cared for us. But we had a couple that we had to ask not to return to the room for a couple of different reasons. But it helped keep our people score up. There were other things along the way. In the middle of October, things were really bad. My personal health had gone lower. I got called to come back to a different hospital for more work. I checked myself into the hospital on a Friday. And I woke up Tuesday. I slipped into a coma Friday night on T-minus 32. And I woke up on T-minus 28. It was probably the first time that I actually felt like giving up. Now, we do something called the 5 voices, which is a foundational tool that I use. I'm a pioneer, which pioneers don't quit. We are in it to win it, and we don't quit. And that day I was ready to quit. There was a lot of confusion going on. When you wake up after you've not been around for 4 days or any other period of time, you're very confused. Everything is chaotic at that moment. And by Wednesday, by the following day, I was still pretty much a sour person to be around. But my wife, who's a nurturer by voice order, who doesn't like conflict, we switched places that day. And she pretty much put me in my place and said, snap out of it. Let's win this. Which changed the whole direction of everything. So I redirected the peace index and I started putting the parts back together. Now we had hurdles over the next few weeks. 3 days later, I got an injection of a simple vitamin that shut my heart off. I felt that coming. It wasn't a fun experience, but we got that figured out. A few days later, we had a failure during dialysis, which I went on dialysis for a couple of days for temporary relief. It's amazing what your body can do. The first time I had dialysis, I lost 8 pounds in dialysis, which was crazy to me. The next day, we had the most chaotic moment of all. I had a massive bleeding incident during dialysis and came pretty close to bleeding to death at the hospital during dialysis under doctor care. It was a chaotic moment getting it started. It led to the next day being airlifted to Charlotte, North Carolina, to our transplant hospital. Going through that immediately changed everything for us. Our peace index suddenly changed. My people changed, and we started to change everything about us. We started to focus just on getting better, just on getting healthy. The nurses were great. The doctors were great. Our peace index went through the roof on everything. One of the things that was very interesting is we had to adopt this hospital as our new place, right? And we wanted to make it more fun. The first 5 days we were there, it was rainy, it was gray, it was cloudy the whole time. The nurses liked coming because we would try to make things fun. There's a Dutch term. Some people pronounce it one way, some people pronounce it the other. It's spelled Hygge. The way I know to pronounce it is called hygge. And it's a term that basically means a place of respite. And so one of the things that we help people do is create that. We ask them to create that in their office or their home. And it can just be a fun, warm place. Jeremy Kubicek, who is one of the founders of Giant Worldwide, who created the Peace Index, actually often refers to hygge as string lights. My wife in my hospital room on the 4th day of rain went out to the store and got string lights and hung them in our room. And it made it the most fun room to come into, right? All the nurses would love coming in. They would smile when they came in. One day, one of the nurses came in and she wasn't smiling at all. And when I saw it, I just said, "What's wrong?" She goes, "Well, we found a lump on your thyroid." At that point, I could have bottomed out, but instead, we'd had so many people rooting for us, and she looked so sad that I grabbed her hand and said, "Okay, let's go get this," which I knew was a procedure. And not to go into all the details, if you ever want to hear, I'll be happy to share them. But 45 minutes later, I'm in an operating room with a cheering group of doctors celebrating the fact that I have a benign lump on my thyroid. And to the point where "Hey, do you mind if we take it off?" Absolutely, take it off. A few days later, we get the call.
Time's up, Brian.
Is it time's up? I'm sorry.
No.
There's so much to this. All right.
Oh.
If you'd like to hear more, I'd love to share it. Thanksgiving Day that year, I got a new liver. The next day, I got a new kidney. There's been some more things that happened. I had my timer set wrong, I guess, Carol. I'm sorry about that.
Oh, that's all right. Maybe in the Q&A, we can ask you some questions.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Thank you.
Right.
Or do you want to have 2 minutes to round up? Can you round it up in 2?
I think so.
Okay. Time starts now.
Okay. All right. So there's me on Friday after Thanksgiving, in between surgeries. My personal health score was quite a bit higher at that point. I was going to share some of that. All in all, what this has led to, and there's some more that happened. I became the CEO of a networking organization built around nonprofits. 2 years after this happened, I suffered a widowmaker heart attack. Once I made it through that, I dedicated my life to using everything that I'd gone through in life to take all the good things. I didn't focus on the bad things that happened. I focused on the good things that came out of it, because there was a lot. There were so many good things. And I created an opportunity to give back to folks. So what I do now is, when folks are in crisis modes, I work with them to go back and harvest the good things out of that so that they can move forward and they can pursue their passions with an unwavering confidence to get ahead. So thanks for letting me wrap that up. So there's more I'd love to follow up with folks. So
Thank you, Brian.
No
Thank
problem.
you. And you had an incredible story from our one-to-one. Thank you for sharing. And I'm sure there'll be questions for you when we open up the floor. And our next speaker gives me great pleasure to introduce you to Oludayo Adeniyi. We met in LinkedIn in an audio room. Any On Songs audio room he was on, but has gone now. And at last, Oludayo, we have the opportunity for you to join our Men Are From Mars event, and looking forward to hearing what you have to share. A bit about Oludayo. She is the abundance queen. She is a thought leader who provokes people to change with almost 2 decades of work experience. She's an author, a global speaker, a certified abundance and manifestation coach, law attraction coach, a peak performance consultant, a results coach, certified professional Scrum Master, a chartered human resources practitioner, and a knowledge broker with Tony Robbins and Dean Graziosi. She is passionate about helping career and business professionals attract wealth and abundance with ease so they can achieve their definition of success. She has been privileged to empower thousands of professionals from across the globe. And with that, I hand over to you, Oludayo.
Thank you so much. I am excited to be here today. And firstly, I must appreciate the organizers of this event. Thank you so much for bringing me here. I really appreciate you. Thank you so much. And to the speakers that have gone ahead, Ether, I totally relate with your story. And, there's a lot of connection, with your story. And Brian also, I can connect with your story also. Thank you so much for blessing us with the gift of your story. Yeah, I'm really excited to be here, and I'm grateful for this opportunity to share my story, to be able to, impact and influence, people. Well, one of the things that I've discovered about life is a game. And if you do not know how to play the game of life, you never start to live. Until you know how to play the game, that is when you truly start living. So one of the things that has happened for me, I'm here in Nigeria. In Nigeria, we like education. We like education. The most important thing that we hear whilst growing up is go to school, get a good grade so you can get a good job. And, there's just that thing like when you have the job, everything is done. And that was one of the things that set me up when, I was young. I wanted to be the best. I loved good things. I had big dreams even as a child. And, I was excited about achieving my dreams, achieving my goals. So when I was told that, the moment you have a good grade, life is just going to be abundant, I'm like, oh, so let's go for it. So I went for that. Did all of that. And I remember getting my first paycheck and I held it and I'm like, how do I build wealth with this paycheck? And someone told me, you just have to work for like 20 years, 30 years. You just started. It's going to get better as you go along. I'm like, oh, okay, that suits it. So let me just relax and play along. And I know everything will be fine. But along the line, I read the book, Rich Dad Poor Dad. I'm sure we're all familiar with that book. I read that book and that book totally shifted my mindset. Like, you mean this is the conventional way, there is another way. And, interestingly at that time, that was about 2004, I was doing my PhD. So imagine at that point was when I read Rich Dad Poor Dad. And in the book, Poor Dad was a doctor, PhD holder, and Rich Dad was a school dropout. I'm like, oh, no. I hope I'm not going to end up like Rich Dad, Poor Dad, And, that got me thinking. And that was one of the major shifts that I had in my life. And, I took my education seriously at that time because it was a relatively new information. People didn't have answers. I remember going back to my parents and I'm like, I read this book. Can you provide me answers? And they both looked at each other and they're like, we don't know what the heck you're talking about. We're giving you the best that we could give to you. Go do whatever you want to do. And, there were lots of questions going up in my mind. Okay, how do I live life to the fullness? But I didn't have answers. So I went about my life, started my career. I rose very rapidly up, at about age 30, I was already a director, in an organization. And life was good. I was earning good income. I was doing amazingly well at what I was doing. But I had an experience in my life that totally transformed my life. And, along the line, whilst working, for every one of us, just like Ita said, you get to a point where you feel there's more. I was looking forward to retirement, but I'm like, retirement, so what happens? And I remember reading, when I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, one of the things I gained from that book, and I wrote it down. I was jobless at that time. I wrote it down that I was going to retire at age 38, a jobless graduate. Interesting. I wrote it down, and interestingly, I retired at 38. So I want to give you more of that gist. So, I was working, life was good, I was having fun, I was making money, I was living well, traveling and all of that. And then one day, in 2016, it was like I had an encounter, like someone woke me up. And the question was, what is wealth? And that for me was kind of strange question. Why would you be asking me that kind of a question? What is wealth? And, I tried answering the way I could, but, and then the next question was, what happens if you lose your job? I'm like, what? I can't lose my job. This is all that I have known. How do I take care of my family? How do I take care of me? How do I do that? No, that can't happen. I'm just going to die. That was my response. I was just going to die. And, I remember, and at some point I kept arguing, but something dropped in my heart to say, teach me. And that is why I resonate with what Ita said about trusting your intuition, trusting your gut feeling. In life, that is one major thing that can lead you to your definition of success, because success is personal to every one of us. And that just went away. And in 2018, something amazing happened to me that felt like I was watching a movie. I was in my office. I have an office to myself, and I heard, it's over. I hear voices and I heard, it's over. And all of a sudden, I had to check under my table. Excuse me, is someone hiding under my table? And the next thing I heard was, your job here is over. Oh my God. I was devastated. I just had to tell my driver at that point to just that I can calm down. I didn't even understand. It was so real that I couldn't even deny what I heard. So I remember going out, just driving off, and I called a friend. I'm like, I'm hearing voices. My job here is over. What do I do? How do I sustain my standard of living? Excuse me, is this a dream? And my friend said, just relax, calm down. Everything will be fine. The next day happened to be a management meeting. And during our management meeting, when we finished, I was about entering my office, and my MD looked at me and said, I would like to have a word with you. And I went into his office and he said, something strange happened to me overnight. At that point, I forgot my own challenge. Well, I wanted to pay attention to him. And I'm like, okay, so what happened? Please, I really want to know. He said, I couldn't sleep overnight. Please, I'm not crazy. I'm not mad. Please just hear me out. And I'm like, okay, so what happened? And he said that I couldn't sleep overnight, that the Lord, please listen to this, that the Lord told me that your time here was up and it was time for you to leave, that he had an assignment for you out there. I became the mad woman right there. I started laughing like a mad, and it was like, no, I told you I'm not mad. I told you I'm not mad. And I had never experienced something like that before. And he says, please, as a matter of urgency, so that I have my peace, you need to just write your resignation, put your notice period in it, and I release you at any point you want to go. You'll get all your payments and all of that. And that was how I had to leave my 9-to-5 abruptly. And at that point, it was as if the control of my life was taken off me. This is someone that was in charge of life. And all of a sudden, it was like the wheels were taken. I was confused. So it wasn't like I was going to another job. So what do I do from here? And that was how I found myself in a totally new environment. An environment that taught me things that I'm using today and I'm using to empower professionals and entrepreneurs. I never knew I could be an entrepreneur. I'd always said to myself, a career person, I'll just follow someone, help someone, face my career. And here am I today. And one major thing that I learned during that process is that the most powerful asset that we have as humans is our brain. You see, and there's a consciousness through which we function from. You can function from an abundance consciousness, or you can function from a consciousness of lack. No matter who you are, the consciousness you function from determines the quality of life that you live. I believe strongly that life is not meant to be lived hustling, stressing over life. You travel the world like Hitler, travel the world, enjoy life. The truth about life is this: you never know what you're missing until you take a pause to ask yourself, am I truly living my desired life? Or am I living other people's dreams? A lot of us are living out other people's dreams because that is what has been passed on to us. That is what has been sold to us. But what I do is help people achieve their definition of success. I don't follow the bandwagon. I don't follow the masses. I know I have just one life to live, and my desire is to live it to the fullness. I believe strongly that life is beautiful and life is fun. And the truth about it is that you can truly experience the abundance that life offers you the moment you are able to open your mind to the abundance that is within and around you. And this is one thing that sustained me even when I left my job. And that was the reality that I faced, moving from not having a job to living life now. So a lot of people see me and say, how is she so confident? How is she living her dreams? How is she impacting people all over the world? But the truth is, it wasn't always like this. I have to work on myself. I have to learn new realities. I have to leverage on my mind, leverage on universal principles that has helped me here today. And I dare say to anyone listening today, you can create your dreams. You can create the life of your dreams. And this is my message. I'm so passionate about it. I say it with everything in me, every fiber in me, every energy in me, because I believe every man here was created for abundance. And you shouldn't settle for less. Abundance is in our DNA. We just need to be conscious of the fact that this is who we are. I don't know how a co-creator with God will settle for less in life. I don't know how a co-creator with God will just live life anyhow, hustling and going through the stress. And science has proven that the what's it called? The stress hormone and the creativity hormone cannot exist at the same time. It's either you're in stress mode or it's either you're in what? You're in creativity mode. And a lot of us are in that mode because I used to be there. I used to be there. Though I was getting results, but I was getting results from a place of stress. So my goal, my desire, my passion, my mandate is educating people with my story, letting them know that no matter where you are, no matter how low you think you are in your career, in your life, you can have it all. You can have it. You can have that dream career. You can have that sound health. I had a health situation for 15 years before I was able to go through my surgery. And here I am today, also empowering other women that are in the same condition, telling them you can also get out of this. Whatever you want is possible. And that is why what you think is what you become. Our thoughts become things. Our thoughts are powerful. So what you think determines what you feel. What you feel determines the actions you take. And the actions you take determines your outcome. So the outcomes you have in life cannot be blamed on anyone. You created it. So if we want to change our mindset, if we want to change our reality, then we go back to the drawing board. Change your thinking, change your feeling, take your actions, and your result will automatically change. Universal laws have no respect for persons. The moment you understand them, and that is why I said life is a game. The moment you understand the game of life, you enjoy peace. You discover that life works with you. You are in coherence with life. And this is the message that I bring out to people. And this is how I help people. I run my coaching programs, to help people. I also have a book called The Abundance Code, Cultivating and Mastering a Wealth Mindset is on Amazon. And, it's just help people shift their mindset to what is possible. And I'm excited every time. I do this with passion, man. I do this with the whole of my heart. And I'm grateful for the opportunity to be able to share my story with you, to be able to, connect with amazing people here from all over the world. Thank you so much for having me. And I hope that, with these few points of mine, I've been able to convince you that abundance is your birthright. Thank you so much.
Awesome, Oludayo. Awesome. And you're well within time. But thank you so much. The fire that just came with that. That's like whoosh. Awesome. I'm so glad we met on LinkedIn. Absolutely awesome. Thank you. And wow. There will be questions after Oludayo. So sadly, it's our final speaker for the evening. And it is, I'm happy to say, that we have James D. Feldman, the Nowist, who will be joining us from Chicago. The innovator, recognized as one of the top 100 innovators and motivators of the past 100 years by Incentive magazine. James Feldman lights up a room with his humor, can't wait to hear it, and commitment to transforming lives as he utilizes many of his own life-transforming experiences. Jim has built a thriving group of businesses that over the past 35 years have provided service and support for many of today's Fortune 500 companies. Understanding the challenges that organizations face, Jim provides practical solutions and real-time suggestions for his audience that can be applied and implemented immediately. With a breadth of business and personal experience, Jim also brings an unparalleled level of professionalism that makes his programs and speaking engagements as productive as they are memorable. So, James, please take us through.
So here's where we're at, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen. It has nothing to do with anything in life but how you think, not what you think. And that has changed for us almost instantaneously. And what I mean by that change is a little thing called ChatGPT. So I have now written 16 books. The first book I wrote took me a couple of years. By the time I wrote my 8th or 9th book, I was down to several months. During COVID, I wrote this book, Thinking Inside the Box, in the time that we were shut down in COVID. Using ChatGPT and other AI, I have generated 6 more books in less than 3 days. That's the power of ChatGPT when applied. So let me tee this up for you. You cannot ignore it. It's here to stay. If you don't want to play with it, if you don't want to learn it, if you don't want to get involved with it, it's going to leave you behind. I am not trying to be mean. I am just trying to tell you the facts. The facts are the internet changed the world, and this is going to change the world more than the internet did. It's that simple. It's also that scary. So if you think about ChatGPT for a moment, is it book knowledge or applied knowledge? Let me set this up for you. When she asked me to talk, I was going to talk about 3D thinking, which is a process that I have used, and I'm going to explain it to you on how I delve inside the box. Why the difference? If we look at the box as the metaphor, and we're outside the box, which is what everybody has said for all of our life, think outside the box. We have no idea what the problem is, because the problem is inside the box. So if you go inside the box, you start to figure out what the components are, and you start to understand what the problem is made up from, and typically, the answers are found in simple math. You look at the components, you add them, subtract them, divide them, multiply them, and 99% of the time, you can come up with a solution. But that's applied knowledge, not book knowledge, right? So if you're looking at this concept, knowledge you get from books, wisdom you get from experience, let's now apply that to ChatGPT. ChatGPT has no experience. It has no emotion. It's never had a job. It doesn't take coffee breaks. It is perhaps the most intelligent assistant you've ever hired. Lots of college degrees, lots of book learning, but doesn't check their own work, doesn't understand what's valid and what's not valid. And so you still have to do some of the work. And a lot of people think, well, if it came from the internet, it must be factual. And we all know these days that's not true. Look at this statistic. How long it took to get 1 million users. Can everybody just see this chart pretty easily? Yes? Okay. Netflix, it took them 3.5 years in 1999. For ChatGPT, it took 5 days. Now, We've had technology. We've had all kinds of things that differ between 99 and now. But the truth of the matter is, when the word got out about ChatGPT, everybody got on the bandwagon. But I will tell you, less than 1% of the people that got on that bandwagon know where the bandwagon is going. They're just there for the ride. They're not controlling the narrative. They haven't understood how to deal with ChatGPT. So let's face it, we only have a limited number of days in our lifetime, and we've heard some really compelling stories about life-changing, altering styles that were not anticipated. I've been to New Zealand. There are some really fun places to get stuck, and that's one of them. It will keep you going day after day after day. I had the good fortune of going there and giving lectures to every Hyatt hotel in the country. And so I went from Christchurch to Rotorua, etc. And I became an honorary Maori. I got taken to a zoo where I got to hold a kiwi. Those are the kinds of things that bring out meaningful memories. And so in a certain sense, I'm envious of the fact that she spent 2 years there. I spent much less time, but crammed a lot into it because I knew I wasn't going to be able to spend a lot of time there. Heather's nodding. She goes, it was a good time. It's Disneyland on steroids, people. But nevertheless, it doesn't matter if you have skills. If you can't execute, if you can't get results, you're of no value. And I'm not trying to be mean-spirited, but everybody here is trying to serve someone with their knowledge, with their experience, and hopefully get paid for it. Now, let me make a defining moment here. Not for profit is not a business model. Not for profit is a tax status. You still have to make money in a not for profit. And one of the mindsets that I see of great difficulty in not for profits and other organizations, they go, well, we're a not for profit. We don't have to make money. I go, really? Tell the electric company. Tell the phone company. Tell some of your employees. They don't buy it. So you need to align your actions to the long-term milestones. Look, the best decisions I ever made in my life were the worst times in my life. Why? Because when you're on oxygen, when you're like Brian in a hospital looking around and people are kind of counting him out, and you're cognizant of what's going on, you start to make some real good decisions because it's all about you. And so I tell all of my clients, it's all about them. And I refer to that as what's in it for me, WIIFM. Think of it as Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi is all about connectivity. And if you can connect with your clients and you can solve a problem for them, they'll pay you for it. But sometimes we just procrastinate. We just wait and see what's going to happen. So as we go through this, I want you to kind of think back on what some of the other speakers have said. They had empowering reasons. They were in a workspace that made them feel good about themselves. They developed their own reward system, what it was to motivate them. And I suggest a morning routine. Do something every day and find yourself a motivation buddy. So my thing for what I do every day is really simple. I get up in the morning and I make my bed. I've now accomplished something. Raise your hand if you made your bed this morning. Everybody just raise your hand. Well, so we got roughly half. Half of the people made their bed. Kudos to you guys who made your bed. Were you worried that your mother was going to come over? Were you worried that your kids were going to come over? No, you got up to make your bed so that when you go back to bed tonight, it looks fresh and clean and ready for you, as opposed to going and seeing your bed and going, oh my goodness, look at that mess. Start your day by making your bed. And ask yourself this question. I'm going to give you a moment to take a screenshot of it. What am I going to do differently tomorrow that'll give me better results than I got yesterday? You need to ask yourself that question every single day of your life. And don't lie to yourself. It doesn't work. So look, if you talk about chat, GPT, this is what's already happened. Content creators are using it. People are creating music. videos, artwork. If you can dream it up, Chat GPT and its prompts, and by the way, its prompts are how you talk to it. So you have to talk to it like it's an 8-year-old. And you only say to the chat or the prompt, I want you to do this one little thing. And then chat comes back with an answer. And you go, well, that's not exactly what I wanted. Take what you told me and expand it. Or take what you told me, condense it. Take what you told me and refine it. Talk to them like you're educating a young person. Because chat doesn't think. Chat just goes into a big database. And by the way, if you're using the free version of ChatGPT, that stopped with a database that was built from 2021 back. So it doesn't give you current information. If you really want to use it to drive your business, to have meaningful responses, you need to move to Chat 4. And that costs you $20. And if you can't come up with $20 to invest in your life or invest in your business, I don't know why you're here. Because you've made a decision that $20 is more important to spend it at Starbucks than dependent on how you're going to guide the rest of your life or how you're going to impact your clients. When we talk about the numbers, let me just throw these out. 50% said they're going to rely on it. 50% said it's supplementary. People think it's going to increase their income. I can tell you it's already increased my income tenfold. In fact, what I discovered is that so many people couldn't use it, didn't know what to do with it. I actually have come up with a course. And I've partnered up with someone else, and we have now spent close to 200 hours learning about ChatGPT so that you don't have to. And we're going to apply it to businesses for coaches, consultants, and entrepreneurs. It's that simple. We're going to tell you how to find your competitors and look at what your competitor's doing right or your competitor's doing wrong so that you can do better and make more money. So 3 real quick areas, right? Contents, increase your income, increase your value using ChatGPT. Now, this has all come about since Carol asked me to speak, because a month ago, I wasn't talking about this, or 2 months ago, I wasn't talking about this. I was very focused on my 3D thinking. But I have been working with AI for over 2 years, and it wasn't until I realized that 150 million people have signed up for it already, and they're all using it for this stuff. Look at these things. These are just what's happened in the last couple of months. 97% of content creators are going to use them, but they have to think. They have to understand. You know, there's an old joke about a woman who has a clogged up sink. The plumber comes over. Plumber looks at the sink, grabs a wrench, whacks the side of the sink on one side, whacks the drain with another one. Water's flowing perfectly. Hands the woman a bill. She looks at the bill. She says, $100. He goes, what's your problem? I fixed your sink. But it's $100. He goes, you have an issue with that? She says, all you did was whack the sink. I said, oh, I see the problem. It was $1 to whack the sink, as you described it. But knowing how hard and where, that was $99. You're paying for my experience, not for the fact that I knew how to whack the sink. So look at all this stuff that's out there. It's like trying to learn from a fire hose. This is just a few of the things that have cropped up to help you do things in a creator economy. These are some of the things that are out there to help you build your business. And believe me, I'm just touching at the very, very tip of this very, very large iceberg. So what are you going to do? You're going to create content. You're going to grow your audience. You're going to own your audience. You're going to monetize your audience, and you're going to manage your business. But it's all about how you think. So if you're looking for artificial intelligence to run your business, it ain't going to happen. If you're looking for artificial intelligence to be the smartest person you have ever hired, that doesn't take coffee breaks, that doesn't complain, that shows up every day, that doesn't get involved in social media, that doesn't complain about how much work you're giving them, that's why you use ChatGPT. Well, what do I know what I'm talking about? Well, look at the group that I'm with, Michael Dell, the creators of Google, and me. I was considered one of the top innovators of the 21st century. And I was humbled to be in the group with those guys. It's a pretty good calling card. But at the end of the day, I've had conversations with them because I've taught some of their organizations how to think, not what to think. So as we move forward, think about this one. Don't let what you think you know prevent you from learning what you need to know. And you need to know ChatGPT. Why? Because what started here is going to change the world, and that's ChatGPT. So it's a tsunami. It's coming. You can either get drowned or you can get your surfboard. And if you're on your surfboard, it's going to be quite a ride. So if I was given this as a 2-day class, I would tell you all these things that we're going to cover. I'm just going to kind of fly by them a little bit because I want to shift your thinking. I want you to understand how I transform ideas into actions. These are a few of my clients. These people pay me a lot of money. These people all will say to you, item by item, by person, Jim undercharged us and over-delivered. He's our go-to guy. He's our magic phone call when we have a problem. I'm not a C-suite executive. I advise C-suite executives. I'm the big idea guy. I come up with big ideas, and I am humbled, which is very hard for me. I am very humbled by what ChatGPT can do for me and how I can use it for my clients. So if success comes from turning problems into opportunities, then I'm a must-have. And just like COVID, I was a must-have. And I'm sold out. Carol likes that one. She's going to steal it. Are you something that everybody needs? And ChatGPT is that. Okay? Don't confuse impossible with inconvenient. Don't do that. Look at all the things that we used to have to do. ChatGPT will address all these. I'm not a spokesperson for ChatGPT. I'm an advocate. I'm somebody that's saying to you, you want to change, you want to shift how you think, learn, and remember rule number 6. And I'm going to get back to that in a second. So when I was 7 years old, I went to my mother. I said, I'd like an allowance. She said, go talk to your father. I went to my father. I said, I'd like an allowance. He said, go talk to your mother. I learned my very first business lesson at the age of 7. Get all the decision makers in the room at the same time. My mother said, we're not going to give you an allowance. You can mow the yard. You can wash the car. You can walk the dog. My father says, why don't you open up a lemonade stand? Whoa, great idea. I'll open up a lemonade stand. I went outside, and as far as the eye could see were lemonade stands. In fact, some of those lemonade stands came about when I realized that I'd gotten all the decision makers in the room, and I asked them an important question. If you're not going to hire me, or if you're not going to use me, what's stopping you? What can I do to help you? Well, go open up a lemonade stand. That came from my father. So I learned from mistakes. I learned from advice. I learned to observe what works. I document them and I share them. And that's what ChatGPT does. So I opened my lemonade stand. No. Why? I went out there and I looked at all the lemonade stands. Look, some people had events. Some people were going to outmarket me. But I looked at the problem and I realized they all needed something. What did they need? They needed me. I was never going to be the best at what I could do. Look at that. But I could sell to those that did the best of what they could do. So I went to the store with my mother and I priced out bulk lemonade. I pressed out bulk sugar, Ziploc bags, and then I realized you needed cups. And you're going to have the cups. So at night, I went door to door to the mothers and sold them lemonade kits. And at the end of the summer, selling these little kits all night long, I had $351 in the bank. And that's how I started. It came about by processing not what to think, but how to think. Go inside the box, look at the problem, break it into the components, and see how you can monetize that for your business. Very quickly, I was in law school. Guy says, I can't make it to the study group. I have to go buy a railroad car. I have to go adjust a railroad car. I go, what's that mean? He says, I need to adjust a railroad car. I said, I don't understand. He says, we lost the railroad car. We found it. Now I got to see what I can do with it. Well, we went there. We found it. We opened it up, and it was filled with pasta sauce. Number 10 cans of pasta sauce. This is a huge boxcar filled with pasta sauce. Now, if we had time, we would do the back and forth of what do you do with it? But I'm going to save you some time. We figured out where it was going to. It was going to perhaps prisons, perhaps the Air Force, perhaps universities. So I immediately started calling these guys and I said, listen, I'd like to sell you back a railroad car of pasta sauce. Well, we're very interested. Okay, I'll call you back. I turned to my guy and I said, how much you take it for right now? He says, $5,000. I said, sold. I went to the bank. I borrowed $5,000. I bought this thing. And Monday morning, I'm ready to sell my pasta sauce and make a lot of money. I call the first Air Force group and he goes, we'll take it. We're going to give you $2 a gallon. How many gallons do you have? What? How many gallons do you have? Hell, I don't know. So I took a can, I measured, I did the cubic square inches in the foot and this and this, and I come up with 33,000 gallons. At $2 a gallon, I made 66,000 less the 5,000 that I was going to give to the bank. Yes. All we need is your GSA number, government supply number. I didn't have one. Well, we can't buy it. Long story short, I went to universities, prisons, etc. Nobody would buy it because I didn't have a GSA number. Instead, undaunted, I said, well, if I'm focused on where it's going to, let's focus on where it's coming from. I called the manufacturer. I said, I have some of your pasta sauce. He said, what's the expiration number? I don't know. Back out to the railroad car. Go found a can. Found the number. Went all the way back home. Called him back. I said, here's your number. He says, okay, it's still good. He says, I'll give you $1.50 a gallon. Remember, I was getting 2. Now I'm only down to $1.50. I didn't like that. I'm losing money. I wasn't figuring out how much money I was making. I was figuring out I didn't get as much money as I would have gotten if I sold it to the Army. And here it is. How to think. I'll take $1.65, not $1.50. Why? He's not going to object to that little bit, right? And then I asked him the key question. How much will you give me for the boxcar? I sold him the boxcar and the contents and made about $75,000. Ladies and gentlemen, that's how I learned to think inside the box. It is not about anything but how to think if you want shift to happen.
Wow, awesome. Thank you for that whistle stop education. ChatGPT is something that is above my head, and I know it's only because I haven't investigated it. But yes, we're going to be opening up the floor for Q&A now. And firstly, I want to thank you, James. Thank you, Oludayo. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Heather, for sharing your wisdom and your stories, your knowledge with us. We really appreciate it, and we appreciate those who are still on. Yeah, absolutely fascinating. So the floor is open for Q&A, and then Ritu will close us out. Don't be shy. Brian.
Okay, I was going to raise my hand, but Heather, what's going to be number 37 or 38?
36 is next.
36.
I don't know if it's either Madagascar, Mauritius, or somewhere in Africa.
I have a brother who was a missionary and lived in Madagascar for 9 years.
Oh, wow. Whereabouts?
I forget the town. It was on the northeast coast. So I can't think of the name of it. So at the polar opposite end from Antananarivo, though. So not there. So So
Gotcha. Very cool.
What she didn't tell you is that New Zealand has no liability issue. Everything is a fixed price. So when you do a bungee cord jump and you break your leg, they already tell you how much you're going to get. There's no lawsuits.
Oh, it's really cool too. Like, yeah, they don't sue people there, and I needed
right.
physical therapy, and I got into their system, so I paid like next to nothing. It was great.
Awesome. Oh, Brian, sorry, James, one of your URLs isn't working. The second one in the last message.
I'm sorry, the email's not working?
The URL in the last one.
Oh.
You've got your discard, and then there's a...
it's because... Oh, no, separate them. It put it together. Start with your HTTP, same as above here.
Okay.
I think what's happening is you're clicking on the two together, and that was what the chat box did. Let me see if I can fix that.
All right. Excellent.
I'll put it in again. Sorry about that.
Thank you. All right. Jill, didn't welcome you before. You came after we started, but thank you so much for joining us. Always a pleasure to see you.
Thank you. Sorry I was late.
No, that's fine. You're here. Excellent. Brian, you didn't get to finish your story, but seeing you in that hospital bed, what Anne must have been going through must have been horrendous.
I think at that point, probably she felt a lot better because that was in between surgeries.
Oh.
And the liver was working fantastically. So they knew they already had that news. So as long as everything was going to stay steady, then I got wheeled into surgery the next morning for the kidney surgery. So there's a funny story behind that too. I won't take up everybody's time.
But you had 2 transplants.
I had liver on Thanksgiving Day and kidney the following day.
Okay.
So, Brian, is there a book that you're writing or you already have written about your journey at all?
It's kind of funny. Actually, the meeting I had before I got on this was just finalizing some things for it. So,
have you already written it, Brian?
Yes. So, but your discussion of ChatGPT, I'll go ahead and throw out because we did use ChatGPT to help write some parts.
Did you use it for your editing and things like that?
So this started a few years ago. So I'd started working with a writing coach at that point and an editor. So most of it had already been done. We did use it to read through a couple of things and get some ideas of how to potentially rewrite. So it was very useful.
Good. It's pretty amazing.
Yes, I'll have to investigate.
So Carol, it will be difficult for you to get on 3.5 because so many people have signed up. So if you can't get on, I really recommend that you do the $20 version because then you can get on.
Is that a month?
But it's a month, yes. Now, this class that we're doing, this program is 7 weeks, and it's very targeted to the people that sign up for it. It's not trying to do a fire hose. It's very focused on your needs. So if Brian's signed up as an example, we would focus on his book. We would focus on the promotion of his book. We would focus on designing the cover for the book, all using ChatGPT and the prompts. Because when you see this stuff work, you just shake your head. I have a client that spent almost 2 weeks trying to index a book. And he called me up. He was very frustrated. He said, "Can you help me?" And I said, "Help you? Just use ChatGPT." What? And I took one chapter and indexed it for him. I think the chapter was 35, 40 pages. It did it in less than 15 seconds. If you haven't gone there, people, again, I'm just trying to share this with you. It is, without a doubt, going to be the biggest life changer in our entire lifetime, period. And either you get on board or it's going to leave you behind.
Excellent. Thank you.
Hey, just FYI, I just signed up for ChatGPT 3.5. So,
Oh, went in. Good. Cool. Just remember that it's got to be a very simple prompt, very simple request. And you can go online and find out people doing YouTubes. They're referred to as prompts. A prompt is the way you ask it a question. And then do not hit regenerate, but say, using above, I'd like you to do the following things. If you hit regenerate, it goes away and starts all over again. Now, you may want that to happen, but at the very least, copy it and throw it into a Word document so it doesn't disappear.
Excellent.
I'm sorry. I don't know how you pronounce your name correctly. Is it Oludayo?
Oludayo.
Oludayo? Sorry. Where in Nigeria are you?
I'm in Lagos.
Okay. How are things? Like I'm figuring out what my next destination is. So, I'm just curious.
Nigeria is an amazing place. So amazing.
Okay.
You would love it here.
Okay. I'll add it to the list of places I look at. Thank you.
Please do. It's a beautiful place.
Awesome. We've come up almost to time now. Ritu, just a final word from me. Thank you, everyone. And Ritu, I hand over to you, the CEO and founder of KaushalyaUK.
Thank you so much, Carol. It's been absolutely wonderful tonight, as all our Men Are From Mars sessions that we have. First of all, I want to say a big thank you to you, Carol, for bringing everybody together. And the quality of people you bring to this platform is amazing, always. So thank you so much for that. To all our speakers, what wonderful shares. I mean, very motivating, inspiring. And the reason this platform exists is because KaushalyaUK wants to make a statement, because many women-oriented organizations carry this reputation that because it's a women's organization, it must be anti-men. And that is definitely not the case. We totally believe that men have to be and are very much a part of women empowering movement here. I mean, what Brian shared is absolutely exclusive in itself. What James has been trying to educate us around, I think that is a total game changer. And I have had a very little experience, James, around ChatGPT with the free version. And I must say that that was not my initiative, because I'm not a very technical person myself, but my husband works in IT. So I kind of looked through the window, but totally mind blowing. So thank you very much for bringing that to everyone's attention. I'm sure this is going to be the next thing everybody should be looking into, especially business owners. Oludayo, thank you so much from all the way from Nigeria for joining us here. And Heather, what can I say about what you have shared with us tonight? It's absolutely a dream, full stop. So thank you so much. Thank you. And everybody who joined us tonight, I want to say a big thank you for deciding to share your time with us. Please stay connected. We are very much on social media platforms and Facebook, Instagram. We are now on YouTube as well. This recording will be shared over there. And yeah, if nothing else, please give us a like. And as I say, stay connected. Thank you very much for tonight. And wherever you are, have a wonderful evening or day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye for now.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.